ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor tonight to address the Senate for the 2016 Lincoln Day speech. Now, I'm going to try to do something a little bit different, a little more interactive to keep everyone's attention. So on your desks, you'll find there's a letter from me and then two small packages of paper. The first packet is a chronology of the events leading up to a seminal moment in the Civil War. And the second pack is a copy of the resolutions that this body passed during 1861. So please look through them. If you feel like co-sponsoring, let me know. You've got a couple of minutes. Now, I'm also asking about 20 of you to play a role here tonight. So on your desk, you should have a little script that tells you, and you have a card that identifies you as one of the senators that was sitting in this body in 1861 with your name, the county, and then it'll also tell you to vote yes or no on 3 different resolutions. So hopefully this is fun, and we'll get going. All right, in 1861, President Lincoln was facing a storm of rebellions that's rolling across the country. Friends, family, and neighbors are turning against one another, and the country is rending itself apart. There's a very real possibility that the state of Maryland will secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. Sympathies for the South ran high in many regions. And in southern Maryland, we had smugglers crossing the Potomac River to aid the Confederacy. So it's February of 1861. Secessionists convene in Baltimore to discuss secession, but it ends without a declaration. President Lincoln passes through the city in disguise to secretly arrive at his own oath of office. April 12th, Fort Sumter is fired upon, and the war begins. A week later, the 6th Massachusetts Regiment is transferring trains in Baltimore. They're attacked by a riotous crowd. Soldiers fire into the crowd, and at the end, 4 soldiers are killed, 12 civilians are dead. These are the first casualties in the Civil War, inspiring poetry and song. Governor Hicks and Mayor Brown order the telegraph lines, bridges, and railroads cut to prevent further Union troop movement into the city. Maryland Governor Thomas Holliday Hicks calls for a special session of this legislature to convene on April 26th, and almost immediately decides to remove the legislature from Annapolis, which was then swelling with Union troops and Confederate sympathies. Now, the day before it convenes in Frederick, Lincoln writes a fateful letter to General of the Army Winfield Scott. On the second day of that special session, the first special session, the Senate acts to address calls for secession from these extremists. So on vote number 1, and now I'm asking my Senate reenactors, on vote number 1, Senators, do you have the power to commit this state to secession? How do you vote? No. There. The vote is unanimous. Yet on the same day, General Winfield Scott announces the suspension of habeas corpus by direction of the President. You also vote to send commissioners to the President about the occupation by federal troops and to Virginia to negotiate the protection of property in Maryland, and to Delaware in regard to the arming of free Negroes on the Maryland line. On May 13th, martial law is declared. General Benjamin F. Butler enters Baltimore by rail with 1,000 Union troops. He occupies Federal Hill and points his cannon at the city. He suggests to the commander of Fort McHenry that he prepare to bombard Monument Square. The next day, you vote on resolution number 4 in your packets that affirms Maryland is a faithful member of the Union, but determined to not take part in the war with the Confederacy. That the present military occupation of Maryland is in flagrant violation of the Constitution, yet Maryland shall not secede. So, on vote number 2, Senators, does the state secede? How do you vote? No. Is the union satisfied with your loyalty? No. In Baltimore, Major General Nathaniel P. Banks arrests the mayor, the Marshal of Police, George Kane, and 3 police commissioners. The legislature continues to find its middle path, demanding restitution for the destruction of property in the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal by Southern troops, while requesting the governor return weapons to the state armories taken from the uniformed companies of the state. Most importantly, on June 22nd, you vote remonstrating the Federals against the unlawful arrests of its citizens, specifically a member of the House of Delegates in the presence of the governor, and that, quote, the property of no man is safe, the sanctity of no dwelling is respected, and the sacredness of private correspondence no longer exists. You passed resolution number 14 on federal relations. You ever wondered where the Federal Relations Committee comes from? Which includes, quote, that we deem the writ of habeas corpus the great safeguard of personal liberty, and we view with the utmost alarm and indignation the exercise of despotic power that has dared to suspend it in the case of John Merriman, now confined in Fort McHenry. When you return for the 3rd special session, the final 2 resolutions of 1861 are presented on August 7th. And this time, resolution number 15 uses the president's name directly, protesting the unconstitutional and illegal arrests of the mayor and the police in Baltimore, quote, without oath, warrant, presentment of a grand jury, or lawful cause, disclosed or trial had. So, on vote number 3, senators, does the state protest these proceedings? How do you vote?
Yes.
On August 31st, certain newspapers are suppressed in Baltimore. Yet on September 12th, the editor of the Examiner writes to the Secretary of State Seward to advise that of 22 senators, only 8 are loyal, and 14, quote, in whom I have no faith. President Lincoln orders the arrest of Maryland legislators who are openly pro-South the next day. Among them, and please hold up your cards, from Allegheny County, Senator Thomas J. McKay. From St. Mary's County, Senator Oscar Miles. From Baltimore County, Senator and Dr. A.A. Lynch. And just to make sure that the body cannot function, the reading clerk of the Senate, John Brewer, and the committee clerk of the Senate, S.P. Carmen. Plus 25 delegates, including the Speaker of the House. Many remain in jail without trial for 4 years. Rather begs the question, wouldn't you like to ask him, President Lincoln, why did you arrest us?
All the folks paying? I guess not.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor, for having me come here to speak this evening. I want to say that your prosecutorial techniques are sufficient, not yet stellar. And I also want to thank Mr. President for allowing me to bring in to this chamber my bodyguard, Private William Montanari. Ladies and gentlemen, it was my inauguration as the 16th president on March the 4th, 1861. At this time, I had the highest priority to dedicate to my presidential oath to protect, to serve, and preserve this nation. We were on the verge of a civil war as the result of 7 southern states that had confiscated federal properties and claimed secession to start their own country. There were a number of border states of the Union, including Maryland, that were considering this cause. Maryland was the most important state for me and my administration to hold into the Union due to its geographical position. As well, no state more than Maryland had such contention between its citizens in regards to the issues of pro-South and pro-North. The Civil War came on April 12th, when a rebel militia bombarded the federal Fort Sumter. 1 week later, insurgents in Maryland attacked recruits from Massachusetts for the U.S. Army as they traveled down towards Washington City when they were changing trains in Baltimore. This resulted in 16 deaths, the first casualties of the Civil War. The Maryland State Legislature called a special session immediately, and knowing that, I immediately wrote a letter to General Winfield Scott, the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armies. Let me read a passage from that letter. My dear sir, the Maryland Legislature assembles tomorrow at Annapolis, and not improbably will take action to arm the people of that state against the United States. The question has been submitted to and considered by me whether it would not be justifiable upon the ground of necessary defense for you, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army, to arrest or disperse the members of that body. I think it would not be justifiable. They have clearly legal rights to assemble, and we cannot know in advance that their actions will not be lawful and peaceful. I therefore conclude that it is only left to the commanding general to watch and await their action, which, if it shall be to arm the people of that state against the United States, he is to adopt the most prompt and efficient means to counteract, even if necessary, to the bombardment of their cities, and in the extremest necessity, the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. Regarding my approval to suspend the writ of habeas corpus, I quote from Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Despite the fact that the Maryland State Legislature voted not to secede, for which I was then and I am now extremely and immeasurably happy, but despite that fact, there were many Marylanders continuing to assist and encourage the secessionist movement. One of the first Marylanders to be arrested for these acts of treason was John Merriman on May the 25th. He admitted to speaking openly about his pro-South position. It was alleged that he had taken on actions of absolute treason when he helped and assisted to burn Union bridges, to cut Union telegraph lines, and to recruit and train soldiers for the Confederate Army. More arrests followed, including those by delegates and senators, such as Oscar Miles of St. Mary's County, Dr. A. Lynch of Baltimore County, Thomas Franklin of Anne Arundel County. These Maryland legislators and senators would not pledge their allegiance to the Union. And further, they would excite and encourage the secessionist movement. After arresting them without the writ, they were given the opportunity to pledge their allegiance. Those who did were released. Those who did not remained in prison. In closing, Mr. Prosecutor, I say with assuredness that my actions were constitutional and appropriately driven by my oath of the presidency to preserve, protect, and defend. I would with confidence repeat these actions in the event that a similar situation occurred with me as the president. Again, I thank you, all of you, for hearing my words. May God bless the state of Maryland and the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will excuse some of the anachronistic taxonomy that I was using, but I was trying to remain historically accurate. Trying to wrap this up. Most of the political prisoners were ultimately conveyed to Fort Lafayette and remained there for the duration, including our own Marshal of Baltimore Police, George Kane. After 2 years in prison, when he was released, his quote, and this is the only really good quote that we could find from someone who was actually incarcerated. Without having been held upon any specific charge, I am turned out of prison without any reason being assigned for it. And thus, in my arbitrary arrest and release, I illustrate the most flagrant violation of constitutional liberty. It would be unbecoming the dignity of the subject to cast abusive epithets upon the author of this gross outrage, but when allowed the opportunity, I pledge myself under the pain of forfeiture of the good opinion you have always honored me with, to show that all that is bad in a man, unpatriotic in a citizen, and corrupt in an officer finds itself concentrated in this individual. Now, President Lincoln left us a legacy of many lessons in leadership that are as applicable today as they were in 1861. It's easy for us to admire his accomplishments in the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, keeping the Union together, even though some people were probably less enthused with his tough decisions. But can you imagine the weight of the decision to arrest a legislature? Can you imagine? So today is our chance to revisit these dramatic events that Maryland experienced 150 years ago, and remember that the fundamental legacy of Lincoln can be embodied in a single word: freedom. Over 600 U.S. colored troops from St. Mary's County alone served in the war thanks to Lincoln's edict, allowing both free men and slaves to join the fight. I want to recognize the bravery of two such men whose names are memorialized on a monument in Lexington Park. They were awarded the Medal of Honor. They are Sergeant James H. Harris and Private William H. Barnes. They were both born slaves and then swore to protect that nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We need to strive to be worthy of their honor. Lincoln's legacy is that we come to this chamber to be bold. And in his words, the legitimate object of government is to do for a community of people whatever they need to have done, but cannot do at all, or cannot so well do for themselves in their separate and individual capacities. Thank you.